Hi, everyone. Glad to have you here. This is the place where we share real horror stories that will make you think twice before turning off the lights. If you enjoyed true creepy experiences, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Now let's get into today's story.
I lived in a small fourth-floor apartment in the Humboldt Park area of Chicago with my partner and our German Shepherd. The building was typical for the neighborhood, old and inexpensive, with 12 apartments split between two entrances. My unit and the three below it shared the front stairwell, while the other apartments had a separate entry. All of the apartments were connected in the back by porches and wooden staircases that led to a gate and an alleyway. The window on each landing gave a clear view of my back door if you stood by the front entrance. My partner played in a touring band, which meant I spent long periods alone. That was difficult for me. In the past, I had been stalked by an ex, and the fear of him returning never fully went away. Not long before one of my partner's longer tours, I received a disturbing message from that same stalker on yet another new Facebook account. Around the same time, my car was broken into. Nothing was taken except a bag of dog treats. Even cash left in plain sight had been ignored. It left me uneasy. Despite my concern, my partner didn't cancel his trip. I installed cameras, braced the doors, and stopped sleeping at night. My dog seemed stressed too. She had diarrhea for days, and I had to take her out multiple times each night. Every time we stepped outside, I felt like someone was watching us. I tried to shake it off as paranoia, but the feeling never left. Our front door didn't always close properly unless you pulled it hard. I told the neighbor on the floor below about the stalker and the broken car window. He was understanding and said he'd remind the others to shut it securely. After that, the door was locked more often. One Sunday morning, my partner returned from his tour. Just minutes earlier, the neighbor on the first floor had been robbed. He was a quiet guy who lived alone and kept to himself. He collected instruments, sold a little weed, and spent most of his time in his apartment. That morning, he had left briefly and forgot to lock his door. When he came back, someone had eaten food from his fridge, taken a coat and boots, grabbed his college diploma, and walked out with a set of keys. They had ignored the instruments and drugs. The neighbor from the second floor told him to come tell me, since I had mentioned being stalked. When he knocked on our door, I nearly jumped. My partner had just walked in. So we all stood together in the stairwell while the neighbor filled us in. We were talking when we heard the front door open and close below us. A moment later, we saw a man climbing the back stairs toward our door. He wasn't someone I recognized, and he definitely wasn't my stalker. But I can still see his face clearly. He wore shiny black shoes and a long black coat that didn't fit him. Through the window, our eyes locked. He froze halfway up the stairs, slowly pulled out a phone, and turned around while pretending to make a call. His body was stiff and unnatural. As soon as he reached the lower level, he bolted. My neighbor called the police. My partner and I rushed to the back porch. We saw two cars tear out of the alley, a sedan and a van with no windows. Both vehicles sped off and we didn't catch the plates. The police told us it didn't matter since no crime had technically been committed. The part that stayed with me most was the object my neighbor found outside. It was a piece of wood shaped like a paddle, with one end smoothed into a handle. It had been left near the front door. We realized later it was meant to be a battering tool, something they could have used to force their way in if the key failed. The doorframe had small cracks near the latch, like it had been pressured. It looked like the plan had been to use the master key to quietly set the tool in place, while one person waited at the back porch to block any escape, and another stood at the front to trap us inside. My partner had come home just minutes before. Had we not been standing together in the stairwell, they might have caught us completely off guard. We were lucky. My landlord refused to change the locks, but agreed to let us break the lease. I moved out of the city after that. Now, I live in a place surrounded by lights and cameras, and I've started training a second dog for protection.
I was hiking the Colorado Trail, a long stretch winding through the Rocky Mountains, when I had the most terrifying experience of my life. The trail spans hundreds of miles, cutting through valleys, forests, and high-altitude ridges. I had already seen some unnerving things along the way. One time, I'm almost certain I spotted a mountain lion watching me from a ridge, though I lost sight of it quickly. Another time, I passed too close to a group of free-roaming cattle, and a couple of bulls acted aggressively. Both moments shook me up, but neither came close to what I faced in a lightning storm high in the mountains. The worst part of the trail was crossing a huge open mesa at high elevation. It must have been around 12,000 feet up, a massive, flat space with no trees or cover in sight. As I made my way across, the weather began to shift quickly. Small storms were forming and breaking apart around me, moving unpredictably across the landscape. I could see bolts of lightning striking nearby, sometimes so close that I could feel my skin tighten and my hair begin to stand up. At one point, I even thought I smelled something singed. The trail across that mesa stretched for miles, and there was nowhere to hide. One part of the path would be bright and sunny, while just a short distance away, dark clouds were dumping rain and flashing with lightning. I had to constantly change my pace, either speeding up or slowing down, trying to pass between the storm systems as they moved across the wide open terrain. I had never felt so exposed in my life. Lightning was hitting the ground all around me, flashing so often it felt like the entire sky was strobing. I could see dozens of strikes every minute, some of them terrifyingly close. I had one of those moments where I thought to myself that I might not make it out of this. Every step felt like a gamble, with nowhere to run and nothing to crouch under. That long stretch across the mesa lasted maybe half an hour, but it felt endless. I kept moving, heart pounding, hoping none of the strikes would hit close enough to end everything. When I finally stepped off that open area and into safer ground, I was soaked, shaking, and overwhelmed with relief. That experience taught me real fear in a way nothing else ever has. I had just moved from Melbourne to a small rural town in Australia to live with my boyfriend. He was on a military posting, and we had rented a house in a part of town we didn't know much about. It turned out to be the rougher side. The town itself was remote, surrounded by long stretches of nothing in every direction. There were a few scattered suburbs, but no big cities anywhere close. The house was old and full of glass. Giant windows covered the front side, giving anyone a clear view into the kitchen, living room, and one of the spare rooms from the street. On one side of the house was a metal fence leading to the backyard. On the other side was a narrow path hidden by thick bushes that ended at a tall, locked gate. That gate led to a small patio and the back door. At night, if the kitchen light was on, you couldn't see out, but someone outside could easily see in. The back entrance led through the laundry room and into a small bathroom. From there, you'd walk into the kitchen, with our bedroom off to the left, and another one just beside it. During that week, my boyfriend had been called away for training, so I was home alone. It was summer, and the heat was brutal. The house had poor air conditioning, so I often left the windows open. A few times, I even accidentally fell asleep with the back door wide open. I didn't worry too much. I had lived alone for years and always felt safe in Australia. That Friday, after 5 days on my own, I decided to walk into town to kill some time. The walk took a while, and by the time I got back, all I wanted was to sit in front of the TV and cool off. I spent the afternoon playing games in the living room. A few times, I thought I heard noises outside the kitchen, along the narrow path leading to the patio. But the man next door had a workshop, so I figured he was just out there working on something. Later that night, I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone like I always did before sleep.
I came across a post that reminded me to check the back door. I almost forgot, but I got up and locked it. The door had a basic lock plus a heavy-duty deadbolt with the key screwed into the wall beside it. Not long after that, maybe half an hour, I decided I was ready to turn in. I shut off the kitchen light, the patio light, and got back in bed. I heard the noises again outside near the kitchen, only this time they were much louder. I still tried to convince myself it was the neighbor or maybe an animal moving around. Then I heard it, a loud, heavy thud against the back door. The sound was so intense, it felt like the walls were vibrating. Another crash followed, then another. I could hear glass breaking somewhere near the laundry room. Panic took over. I jumped up and yelled in a deep voice, hoping to make them think there was a man in the house. I slammed my bedroom door shut, locked it, and pushed the bed in front of it. Then I called emergency. The banging didn't stop. It kept going even as I spoke to the operator. Then it suddenly went quiet. I crouched near my bed, frozen in place, still on the line with police. A moment later, I heard footsteps, and then a kick to my bedroom door. They were trying to break it down too. I started screaming. I couldn't even process what I was saying or hearing. I was praying that help would get there before the door gave in. Then I heard sirens. The noise stopped immediately. Flashlights lit up the bedroom window. In that moment, I had no idea if it was the intruders or the police. I couldn't think straight. The next thing I knew, I was in the kitchen surrounded by officers. I was crying so hard I couldn't speak. They had to use my boyfriend's photos on the fridge to get his information and contact his base. When things calmed down and he got home, I finally saw the damage. The tall side gate had been destroyed. The back door was torn off the hinges. The reinforced lock had been ripped straight out of the wall. The laundry window was shattered. My bedroom door was cracked where they had tried to break it open. You could still see the marks from their boots. My phone showed I had called for help just after midnight. The whole thing lasted less than 5 minutes. I think they followed me back from my walk. They must have seen me alone and used the path beside the kitchen to watch the house. The noises I thought were the neighbor were probably them waiting for the lights to go off before making their move. They were never caught. We moved out soon after. The relationship fell apart not long after that. He was gone a lot, and I couldn't sleep. I panicked every night. I stayed up until morning, crying and feeling like I was never safe. It became too much to handle. It took a long time before I realized I had PTSD, but I worked through it and eventually we found our way back to each other. Now I live in the city again, in a secure building with constant security and cameras everywhere. I also got 2 dogs. I sleep better now, but I will never forget the night someone tried to break into my home while I was all alone.
A group of us went camping on public land I knew pretty well. I had spent years riding trails and camping in that area almost every weekend, so it felt familiar. We picked a spot we'd used before, one where we had even partied with others a few times. There were 6 of us on this trip, but 4 of my friends decided to head off to a party someone had mentioned while we were out riding earlier in the day. I didn't go. I was exhausted from digging my Jeep out of a sand washout I had foolishly driven into. It looked impressive for a couple of minutes before I got completely stuck, so I stayed back at camp along with my friend's girlfriend, who also decided not to go. We sat by the fire as it burned down and listened to the sounds of the woods. Coyotes howled from across the swamp, and she was clearly uneasy about it. I couldn't help finding it a little funny, though I reassured her that coyotes wouldn't come near us. After a while, we crawled into our sleeping bags and tried to get some rest. Just as I was beginning to doze off, she sat up and asked if I heard something. I didn't, so I told her to relax and go to sleep. A minute later, she asked again. This time, I was about to brush her off when I suddenly heard it too. There was this strange sound moving along the trail near our site, and it made the hair on my arm stand up. It was faint, but I could clearly make out the tune of an ice cream truck. That wouldn't have been so terrifying if we weren't miles out on a one-way trail, deep in the woods. The path we were on was rough, muddy, and full of ruts. There was no way a vehicle could drive down it quietly, but I heard no engine, no tires over gravel or sand.
just that strange music drifting through the dark. We had passed the end of the trail after dinner. No one had been out there. No one had driven past us either. Whatever it was, it had to be coming from behind us. But how it got there without being heard was something I couldn't explain. I didn't want to freak her out, but I was already rattled. When she asked again if I could hear it, I told her we should get in the Jeep and go meet up with the others at the party. I didn't care how tired I was or how uncomfortable the couch at that campfire pit would be. It was better than staying out there alone, with something wandering around in the dark, playing ice cream music in the middle of the woods.
Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.